Welcome to the Greater Call podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and this is episode 13, Second Chances. And it's our second look at the Apostle Paul, the Apostle of Grace. He was called by God. And for this episode of the Greater Call, I cannot be more excited and honored that the Reverend Ted Scott would be joining us. There he is, all smiling with his green t-shirt on. Just a reminder, folks, you can listen on audio. You can find us on YouTube, search, subscribe, tell your friends. And of course, we're available on all the social media channels at The Greater Call. Anyhow, Ted, welcome. How have you been?
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me, buddy. I'm excited to talk about Paul. I think he's a character in the Bible that gets me excited. Someone that I'm trying to model my life after. And yeah, we're going through a tough season. Maybe we'll get into some of that. But you know what? God is good, and I'm excited to do this. So thanks for having me on.
For those of you who don't know, Ted Scott is a longtime caddie on the PGA Tour, also a coach. A lot of folks don't know that he's a tremendous golf teacher. And I want to call you, Ted, a little bit of an evangelist and kind of a lay preacher, if you will. And if you go to his social media, he does Sunday sermons from whatever PGA Tour stop he's at. And Ted, these sermons that you give, it's not like, I wouldn't say you're Bible bashing, but you're just teaching lessons in life, which this show is all about. So quickly tell us about that before we get into Paul, please.
Yeah, well, like everyone, when you get on social media, there's always someone in grandma's basement typing nasty things to people. And, I just kind of got frustrated by that whole thing, and I was going to get off of social media because of that. And then I thought, well, maybe I can put something different out there and maybe somebody would be interested in it. So one day it happened to be a Sunday. So I just thought, I'll say something that I've learned in my life that's applicable to my life and I'm trying to, implement. And I said, Sunday sermon, I don't know why I said that. And, recorded it, put it out there. And then of course, some people commented, that was great. You should do another one. And, seemed to wait a little while. And I was like, all right, I'll do another one on Sunday. And then started getting requests for it. And people seem to be responding well to it. And, I feel like I've had the fortune to be around a lot of really wise men and women in my life. And one of my favorite things to do is to teach people something that I've learned or something that I've been taught. And it gives me tremendous joy. I love to learn. I love to be around people better than me. And so, if I can take whatever they teach me and pass it on, it's exciting. And so my Sunday sermons are just about that. It's just really about trying to pass on something that someone's taught me and showed me. So it's a lot of fun. And thanks for bringing it up.
Well, in many respects, I wanted to kiss this because this show is about life, or a better life for men and women, whoever, children, aspirant professionals. It's about lessons in leadership, which we all have our sphere of influence. And then it's about building and leaving a legacy. And I don't think you're realizing the legacy you kind of leaving in your very humble way. And so I'm happy to introduce it. But I do want to talk about this a whisker more, because all these Sunday sermons, folks, are happening prior to Ted going to work on the PGA Tour for one Scotty Scheffler, who currently is the world's number one and will be that way for a long time, I would believe. Yet, Ted, you find time to put your priorities first. Because I can imagine when your guy's in contention, it's Sunday morning, it's easy to get mixed up in the hubbub of it all. Yet you will step yourself away, go and spend some quiet time, and minister to people, which is the ultimate in legacy. I want you quickly to talk about that, please.
Yeah, thank you. We're in the entertainment business, whether we like it or not. We're here to entertain, and competition is entertaining, whether it's the Super Bowl, the NBA championship, the World Series, the Masters, the Open Championship, whatever it is. When we're watching it or participating in it, it's something that's really fun and it's exciting and it's competitive and there's a lot of adrenaline. But at the end of the day, people are going through difficult things. My family's going through something very difficult right now, and so my thing is like, what's more important, and I'm trying to keep that perspective, and something that I think Paul had an incredible perspective on. One of my favorite, parts of Paul is that perspective that he had when he was in jail, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But that's just where I'm trying to live my life now as a 52-year-old man, looking back, saying, you know what, if you don't have your priorities straight, you're just not going to be pleased and happy and joyful. And we think it comes from circumstances, but it really doesn't. Heard a really cool quote. Let me get my notes real quick. Just yesterday, it was talking about gratitude. And I think that, let's see here. I love this. I thought this was awesome. It says, gratitude isn't a response to comfort, it's a reaction to confidence.
Mm.
Where are we putting our confidence in, and it's like, situations and difficult things are coming. So are you going to only be grateful in your life when things are going well? Just same thing as golf. That's why golf's such a great game, right? It's like, yeah, man, this guy's got the best attitude when he's 6 under, but what about when he's 2 over? How's his attitude then? So you have to, check yourself, so to speak, and what's your reaction to confidence, and what are you putting your confidence in? And for me, that's learning to put my confidence in the Creator and put my faith in Him and my hope in Him, not in my circumstances. And that's really what Paul did so well, especially when he was in jail in Philippi. That was incredible. So,
Yeah. Okay, one more thing. You've just jogged my mind. Maybe this is the spirit within talking. One of your Sunday sermons was an actual sermon on Easter Sunday at Hilton Head at the RBC Heritage. And you spoke a lot about joy, and you spoke a lot about, you know, being around the best and having tournament wins and being around for major championship wins and stuff. And you're like, well, even my boss, Scotty, says to me, he goes, this is, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, that look, this is not where real joy is. It's great to win, but it's not where real joy is found. I'd love you to paraphrase there because I feel like it's a great kicking off point for us.
yeah, I mean, that's really, it started for me when my eyes were open was when Bubba called me in 2014 after he won the Masters, 2 weeks after he won it, and he didn't even say hello. The first thing that came out of his mouth was, "What's the point?" I said, "What's the point in what?" He's like, "Winning the Masters. What's the point?"
Mm.
And I think he was realizing what a lot of famous people have said since then, that since I've been paying attention anyway, that the pinnacle is not always everlasting. It's like it's a blast. It's great. It's like I try to tell people it's like being on a roller coaster. You get up to the top, and as you're coming over the hill and about to drop, and now your mom doesn't have cancer, you didn't lose your job, you didn't get a flat tire, your dog's healthy, everything in life is fine in that moment because you're in the moment and it's adrenaline, it's high, it's fun. But then when you get done with the ride, all those other things come back. Real life happens.
Mhm.
And I think that's where we take our joy. Oftentimes we think it's got to come from circumstances. Man, that's not the place to be putting your hope and joy in, because circumstances are going to change daily.
Yeah.
So if you're living your life, hoping that everything goes well every moment, it's a stressful way to live. And I think that's what Bubba was really searching for, was like, man, why is this 2 weeks after still not carrying that feeling forward? Of course, we were pumped up, we're high fiving, we're celebrating. It's a blast. But 2 weeks later, you're coming off that high and you're like, I need to do this again. And that's probably why people get addicted to drugs and, adrenaline, jumping out of airplanes, or whatever your thing is that gets you on that high. But those things just don't last. So, for me, that started me down a path of trying to search for something with much deeper meaning
Mhm.
that can help me no matter what the circumstances are. Hey, how can I react with confidence and joy and peace in my heart? How can I find that? Where is that found? And so that's what I've been searching for, and I think I have the answer. Now that I know Paul's story.
Well, given what's your familial circumstance right now, you are the picture of it right now, and I'm so I'm in awe of you, and I'm impressed by you. Okay, you say Paul is your favorite. When I reached out to you to talk about somebody, um, God called him his chosen instrument. And in episode 3, the first one, it was called Unshakable Mission. We talked about the person who was always on purpose. He stayed on mission. He ignored distractions. His mindset and his attitude he just overcame obstacles. And his sole goal was the ministry of Jesus to the Gentiles. And
Mhm.
it's so curious, Ted, because I want to make this about transformation. He grew up in a devout Jewish home, right? He's a member of the Pharisees eventually, and they were essentially taught to hate the Gentiles or the non-Jewish people. And then he went for training under a renowned Jewish leader called Gamaliel, and he was like, his mission was single-minded. He was like, I'm eradicating Jews or followers of Jesus, not Jewish people. And yes, this guy is on his way to Damascus to go and take care of another crop of Jews out there. And he has an encounter with his creator. He's knocked down on his face. And this was like an instantaneous. Well, he went and stayed with Ananias for a while, and Ananias kind of brought him back to health. But he went from persecuting Jews to now going to the same Gentiles, Jews, now going to the Gentiles who he hated just 48 hours ago
Mm,
to become a minister all over the then known world.
yep.
Wrote eventually many books of the Bible. So I want to talk about this transformation because for a lot of us, it's not that like, get knocked over by a bright light thing. And it's maybe for me, it's a continual thing. I would say I'm still in transformation. And for anyone who wants to do life better or be a better leader or leave a better legacy, you got to embrace this transformative time. So I'd love you to elaborate a little bit there if you could.
Yeah, I was thinking about Tim Hawkins, the Christian comedian.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that he says is, man, my testimony stinks. He goes, I wish I was addicted to crack. And that's a really funny line because you
Uh-huh.
think about what a radical transformation it is for somebody that's addicted to crack and now they're not. Whereas somebody that's maybe going around like Paul was trying to do the right thing, he was a passionate man. He thought from a religious standpoint, he was doing good works and, even persecuting Christians and Gentiles. This is what his religion was teaching him. So, maybe he didn't feel like he was a bad person, but man, to go from persecuting and killing people to now loving on those people and caring for those people is a very radical transformation. And that's really the gospel, right? I mean, if you think about what is the transformation that Jesus provides for us on the cross, I mean, the Bible teaches each of us that we're all sinners and we all fall short of the glory of God. And the only way that we can have a relationship with God is to be perfect. Well, how are we going to do that? We need radical transformation. And Jesus died on the cross to make us perfect with him. He took our sin, our shame, our guilt on the cross. And if we accept it, now we're perfect, in his eyes. And that accepts the payment has been paid. So it's like, I think that's what he saw. Like I saw in my life, like, oh my gosh, thank you, Jesus, so much for doing that. And when he had an encounter with Jesus, it was like, wow, this is incredible. Now I want to go tell everybody about it, and that's what we do whenever, man, imagine if you had the first iPhone, it's everybody's got an iPhone, right? And you're like, you're not going to believe this phone I got. This thing is crazy. We get excited about something, we go tell everybody. So I think that was his mission, just, to go throughout the Roman Empire and tell everybody he knows about the radical transformation that was in his heart. And when you see someone go from one extreme to the other, you really got to check yourself and go, man, there must be something to this. Whereas maybe a lukewarm person like myself, you probably haven't seen a radical transformation in me in my life. But someone like him, I'm going to be like, man, what's up with this guy, man? He used to be this and now he's that. I don't even know what he's up to, and I love that story. So,
Mm. Look, this is a Christian show. I'm a follower of Jesus, but we have some people that, watch or listen to this that might not necessarily believe in Jesus as the resurrected King.
sure.
Um, but I still think for those folks, look, for the Jesus follower, we can sort of believe that this is possible. But for the non-Christian right now, I want you to speak a little bit to them too, because I feel like in terms of where Paul was bold in everything he did,
Mm,
and it seemed fearless, okay, but there was a boldness to him. Yet he was a lawyer. He was very learned. And when he was with the Greeks, he'd speak Greek. And when he was with the Romans, he'd speak Roman. So he said he was all things to all people. And here's you, where you might not say it all the time, but you have a light about you and you got this easy smile. And despite your job, which is now demanding, with the world's number one golfer, you're very approachable. And then whenever I turn around, you're wearing this hat of yours that says believe. Okay, so there you smile. There's the smile, folks, if you're watching on YouTube. So it's like you're broadcasting this and this light without necessarily being in your face with someone. Are you getting where I'm going here? Because I'm trying to dig into Ted Scott a little bit because, like I mentioned before I hit record, that I do see, elements of Ted when I read the story of Paul.
Yeah, well, I think, at the end of the day, the Bible talks about the aroma of Christ, right? And I think it's a very attractive aroma. When you get around people, some of my best friends are people that, they're never going to walk up to you and say, you need Jesus, but they just live out in a way that says, man, I need to be something about this person has a sweet aroma about them. And I want to get to know them. And as I get to know them, then you find out they're followers of Christ and you're like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. They're following the creator of the universe. And so for me, even my Sunday sermons that I do, I'm not trying to smash anybody over the head or force them or make them feel uncomfortable. I put on a guide and golf retreat. We just had our third year. It's called the Who's Your Caddy retreat. You can see my shirt says Who's Your
There we
Caddy.
go.
And it's
I'm
basically
a
like,
medium, by the way.
yeah, perfect. It's basically like, what voice are you listening to? It's, God says my sheep know me by my voice, right? So what voice is in your head, right? So who's your caddy? When I get to the golf ball, Scotty's saying, hey, how far is it? What do we got? What's the wind doing? It's my voice. Well, what voice are you listening to in life, right? And so I think one of my friends was reluctant to come to the retreat because he was kicking the tires about God. And I said, hey, I said, have you ever felt uncomfortable around me? Have I, in 30 years of knowing you, have I ever pressured you to do anything? He said, no. I said, I'm not going to start now. I just want you to go and experience what I experienced. No high pressure stuff. You can decide what you want to do. So I think for me, that was a wonderful experience that I had. Nobody was beating me over the head. It was like, yeah, come check out Jesus, see what you think. And I think once you encounter him, as Paul did, as I did, as you have, it's pretty awesome. And you'd be reluctant, or you would be unwise if you didn't follow him after getting to know him. So for the unbeliever listening to this show, just go get around people that are following Christ, that have that aroma, that sweet aroma, that aren't trying to beat you over the head. Spend some time with them, and a real Christian like Paul is going to say, one of my favorite lines he talks about is, what I want to do, I don't do. And what I don't want to do, I do. I mean, that's humility to the finest. I'm like, I'm a broken man, me, I'm talking about me. I'm a broken man. Paul's saying he's a broken man. I know you would say the same thing, and we need help. So when you get around these genuine people that are following this Jesus character, and they're also vulnerable and saying, yeah, I need help, I'm broken. It's like, man, this sounds like somebody that I can relate to. And then you kind of get in line and you're like, man, I think I need this too. So that's what I love about the gospel is really true followers are not going to be, you know, punching you in the face with it. It's just going to be, hey, I'm going to walk my life this way, and come along and see if you think it's worth following too.
Yeah, you got my mind spinning here, and the thing that keeps on resonating with me, Ted, is um, people. If you read the Bible about the transformation of Saul to Paul, Saul was his Jewish name,
Mhm.
and then because he was ministering to the Gentiles or the non-Jewish people, he used his Roman name because he was born Roman as well. Strange story. So people think of this where he goes from persecutor of Christians to believer in Jesus. But I'm listening to you too because I read about the chosen instrument or the apostle of grace, as he's been known, where there was this humility about Paul. And the biggest transformation I'm sort of sensing now is not just that he believed in Jesus, but the whole character of the man changed as well. He went from being bombastic. He was traveling to towns and stuff to basically corral Jewish people and put them out of their misery. And then all of a sudden, he's this minister that's going on ships. He's walking all over the show just to tell one or two people or a town about Jesus. And he was going to Greece and all over the show. Um, so that brings me to another question about you, because you have a very important role as the wingman for Scotty Scheffler and for Bubba Watson when you won the bag for him. And it's always fun for me to watch you guys operate when I'm out there as an announcer, because I see you work, and I think of the Roosevelt quote, which was something to the effect of "Speak softly and carry a big stick." Right? And when I watch you work with Scotty, who's a lovely dude, but he's fairly hard nosed. He's a competitor, right? Yeah, I see you nodding, right? And I see you just make little quips and you say things to him, and I can sort of see how he might be resolute on something, but he listens to you. And that's great leadership too. And that's that humility shining too, which now I'm speaking to leaders. I feel like it's an attractive quality because you get bosses who tell people what to do, and you get leaders who lead people in doing the right thing. So have at it, because I take us on the bag, because to watch you guys interact is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I love the story of Walmart. There was a story about whenever Sam Walton was kind of really getting Walmart going, and they had another company that was doing the same thing. And someone did a study on those two companies. The other company, we don't even know the name of it; it's not in existence anymore. And obviously, we know how successful Walmart was. But when Sam Walton would invite people to his headquarters, he'd wear a name tag and he would ask them questions, and he would be willing to learn and submit, hey man, what can you teach me? And that humility, it really is what makes a great leader. I mean, I think there's a lot of really confident people that you wouldn't want to follow. Even though they're confident, you maybe want them on your team. It's like, oh, I want this guy on my team, but I don't want to be around somebody that's never going to learn and never going to submit themselves to, hey man, you might know something more about this subject than me, right? And um, that's probably Scotty's greatest quality. He surrounds himself with incredible men, and he asks them questions, and he takes what they say to heart, and he ponders it and chews on it. And at the same time, he's extremely confident and extremely competitive. So it's a really rare quality. And I think that's why he's so freaking good at golf, because he has this peace and humility about him, but he also has that fire, and I think it's very rare that you find somebody. Usually somebody's really cocky and confident, but they're not really teachable, or they're really teachable and humble, and they're not really cocky and confident. And with Scotty, you have both. So it's a lot of fun for me to work for someone like that that is willing to hear what I have to say. And sometimes he's like, "No, I'm not doing that." I'm like, "Perfect," And other times he's like, "Man, thank you," and it's cool. It's like that's what makes a really fun job.
Leaders sometimes have to deliver bad news, all right? Or something, not bad news, maybe uncomfortable news.
Hmm.
And I recount this often. In fact, I've used it on the air. Um, and again, this is I'm talking about Paul, because Paul, it says in Acts that he would again speak to people in their native tongue. And when he went to Athens, and he actually talked about their tomb that was to the unknown God, and he basically talked to them about what they liked, and then he engaged them, and they came to his side of the argument. Um, and I watched you one time. Scotty had hit the ball into kind of a nasty spot where it was in the rough, downhill lie, over a bunker, green tilted away from you firm. And it wasn't the best place in the world. And I came in, and just before they got the mic on you, I said something to the effect of, well, Scotty's got his hands full. And then I was about to say something else, and you started speaking, so I laid out. And you were talking through the shot with Scotty, and the last thing you said to him was, let your putter be the superstar. So you're basically not saying to him, yo, bro, you have to hit it over there. You said to him, just hit it somewhere where the putter can be the star. And I smiled from ear to ear. He hits it on the green to about 15, 20 feet and made it for par. And my dad has always said to me, he goes, Mark, you sometimes have to give people uncomfortable news. Make sure they enjoy the ride.
Mm. Well
And
said.
you were the personification of that there. So I feel like there's a real lesson to be learned, please.
Yeah, that was number 10 at Memorial. I remember that. Mainly because it worked out that one time. You say a lot of things, use a lot of clubs, read a lot of putts, and whenever that works out, you're like, yeah, I meant to do that. So, but yeah, I just told him on that shot it was impossible to get it close unless you land it, in the worst spot and maybe make a bogey. I just said, hey, let's make the great shot with your putter on this one.
Yeah.
And I think that's just good advice in life. Sometimes we want to do the heroic thing, or but at the end of the day, we should be listening to wisdom and following wisdom. And that was for sure the right thing to do. I mean, worst case scenario, you're at Muirfield Village, the course is hard. If you make a bogey, especially on hole 10, it's one of the harder holes, you're not even going to lose a whole shot to the field, right? You might lose a half a shot making a bogey. So but if you make a double by trying to get cute, now you might lose a shot and a half. So I think that's one of Scotty's gifts, is that he's very good at analyzing what is wise. And when I do sometimes have some wisdom for him, he's like, that's good. I like that wisdom. I'm going to use that. And so on that particular time, that was the right decision to hit a chip to 20 feet and try to make the putt. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
There is a lot of wisdom and awareness, I would call it as well, for someone to take orders like that and overcome the passionate, emotional human being inside, because the pro golfer feels like they can hit every shot whenever, and to go, well, yeah, he's right. I'm going to do the right thing. I think to be better in life, that is one of the biggest lessons we can glean from Paul, and from this instance, you two guys, where you look at the circumstance. Paul's shipwrecked, and they meet the locals over there, and he basically understands, after being bitten by a snake, right? They thought he was the anti, like a person who was anti them. Where he gets this feeling inside, he goes, "Well, I've got to stay here for a while," and he stayed on the island for a while. So there's a smarts, a wisdom, an awareness that's required, discipline, if you will, where you get the right advice, and then I've got one or other choice to make. What am I going to do? And I've noticed in my encounters around you guys, it seems like the consistently great leaders, winners, whoever they are, they happen to choose the right thing all of the time instead of going with the emotional decision. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think you even get to that space of being a top 10 player in the world without those, wise decisions. I mean, and that's, Scotty's been trying to play professional golf since he was 7 years old, talked about it, wearing pants to the course. So highly trained individual, even from the mental side of the game, just super wise. And he's got a really high IQ. If you spend some time with him, like he's a very smart dude. So, I think of it as, I heard a caddy one time, Johnny, call him Johnny Longsocks, used to caddy for Luke Donald, and he said this. I'm like, this is really wise. He said, I try to sell my stock, and Luke tries to sell his stock, and then we decide, okay, you told me about your stock, you told me about your stock. Which one do we want to buy? Which one do we think is going to return a better investment?
Mhm.
And it's like a pretty cool way to look at it when you have two people willing to put their information out there freely and be able to choose together what's the best one. And I think that's a gift that Scotty has, whereas maybe not all top players would be willing to do that. And it's one of the things that makes him so special. He is wise in that way.
Yeah, and getting back to Paul along the same lines, even though Paul was all in, he took his mission seriously once he had the encounter and the transformation happened. Everything he did was to further the gospel of Jesus. Um, and even though there were stumbling blocks like jail and such, he still chose to do the right thing, even if it was uncomfortable. And that's where it gets hard, huh? Because Johnny Long Socks worked for Paul Casey as well. Super smart dude. John was highly educated. You wouldn't have thought so. But it's like making a smart decision all of the time, every single time, like Paul did.
Hmm. Well, my favorite part of the book of Philippians is when Paul was in jail.
Yeah.
And this is how I'm trying to get to a place in my life because I can't understand it. So I say, okay, I need this. This is what I need. I need to live like this.
Mm-hmm.
Paul's in jail. The Romans have his fate in their hands, and he's excited that he could die. And he's like, how cool is it? I'm going to paraphrase. He's like, hey, how cool is this? If they kill me, I get to go be with Jesus. And you're like, okay, I can see that. And he goes, but how cool is it if I live? I get to tell people about Jesus. And now I'm like, okay, buddy, like how do you get to this place where both of those make sense, right? And I think that's the place that I'm trying to get to in my life. Like I want to have that kind of wisdom where it's like, you know what, just like I read earlier, I'm going to have a reaction to confidence in the gospel
Mm-hmm.
of Jesus Christ and not in my circumstances. That way I can, you know what, yeah, I got cancer, it's okay, I'm going to go home and be with Jesus. I don't have cancer, well, I can keep living on this earth and telling people about Jesus and
Yeah.
live my life. And I think that's where Paul, he got to a place where he truly had the peace that surpasses understanding. And that's something that I'm able to have right now with our circumstance at home with our nephew. Crazy difficult thing, the most difficult thing I've ever, even couldn't even imagine having to go through this. And for the last 3 months, we're going through it. And it's really strange, Mark, that I have this peace. Why do I have a peace? How can I have a peace? I can't make sense of it. Just like I'm sure Paul couldn't make sense of why is he in jail? Are the Romans this, that, but he had a peace that surpasses understanding. And it's like, I have a peace right now that I don't really understand, but I'm very grateful for it. And I think it's because the only way I can get that peace is from Jesus, not from
Yeah.
circumstances. So I love that about Paul. And this really helped me to be more dependent, these difficult circumstances, more dependent on God, not more dependent on Ted Scott, because I am a flawed individual who's messed up a lot of stuff. So it's been good.
Well, bless you. Um, that jail incident alongside his boy Silas, because Paul, leaders, if you don't know the story, was a master team builder. He had this massive commission from God to preach the word of Jesus to the Gentiles or the non Jewish countries. And so it's a huge mission. And he brought Barnabas and Silas and Timothy and all these folks. And he basically created a team and was a great communicator. But that story in the jail where they're in shackles It says in the Bible they're in the deepest part of the dungeon, so it must be dark as heck, right?
Yeah.
They've put the Roman, whoever was in charge, dude, puts a couple of guards on the gate guarding these guys that are in the dungeon, like they're going to get out, right? So it tells me that this leader kind of knew that there was something fishy on the go anyway. And in this place where they're in the dark, in shackles, couldn't have been comfortable, freezing, I'm sure, they're singing and praising God. Okay, so think about this, because I see you smiling.
Yeah.
And I want to now make like a real life lesson out of this and go, there's just something about a smile, right? As a leader, or as a, if you wanted to be an aspirant influencer of people, the smile unlocks everything. And yes, guys singing and praising. And I'm sure they weren't dirges. These dudes were like shouting and screaming and singing like crazy praise songs. But the smile is the thing.
Yeah, and it was transformational to the jailer, right? You know what I mean? Just the influence you have on other people, good or bad. If you're having a bad day and you go around with a frown on your face and rub off on people the wrong way, you can make them have a bad day, or you can go around with a smile on your face and have joy in your heart and bless others. And it sounds like when we read that story, that's something that Paul was very gifted in. And when you're knowledgeable as he was, when you have an encounter with the creator of the universe, you have humility, you're willing to learn, but also you have a passion to share. I mean, it's transformational to many people that came in contact with him, so it's no surprise at all.
Yeah. Folks smile when you're going through travails, even in prison. Prison could be anything, really could be anything. To put a button on the story, which is such a cool story if you go and read it. In Philippians, as Ted mentioned. So Paul and Silas are praising. God breaks the jail door open. They come out singing and praising, right? And then the guard, the jailer, is petrified for his life because now when he's going to lose his head because he's let the two guys go. And they go, "Come on, man, you're with us." And they take him to the house, their place where they were staying. They feed him and all the rest of it. And the guy becomes a believer in Jesus. And I'm like, this is the ultimate in forgiveness as well.
Mm,
Because here's this dude that was guarding them that could have just let them out anyway, right? But
yeah.
he's also had a transformation, but it's because of the way Paul and Silas treated him, where they're like, "Yeah, bro, you're with us. We don't care that you locked us in jail."
Yeah, that's so powerful. When we love others, God tells us to pray for our enemies, love our enemies, feed our enemies. And you think, why would I do that? How many times should I forgive somebody? Seven? No, 7 times 70. There's all these things that point to it. And I think the layers of that forgiveness is so powerful. It's first of all for you. If I'm walking around holding a grudge against someone, the bitterness that I'm tasting is me. I'm having to taste that bitter pill, not them. So by forgiving someone, first of all, it actually allows you to have peace in your heart. But also, when we forgive someone, especially someone that's locked you up in jail or done something really horrible to you, when you can forgive them, it's so powerful. It probably breaks their spirit too, to a point of like, why are you doing this, man? And only through the power of Jesus can we do that, right? Can we have that forgiveness? Because, you know, how much more do we owe other people forgiveness because we ourselves have been forgiven? And Jesus died for our sins. He forgave us our sins through his death on the cross. So when we give that forgiveness to others, it's like really we're sharing the power of the blood of Jesus with them. This is what's happened to me, so I want to pass it on to you. And it's life changing. It's like, wow, it's so liberating. Imagine going around tomorrow, everybody listening to this, whether you're a Christian or not, imagine waking up tomorrow and not having a beef with any human being on the earth, not your wife, not your kids, not the guy that pulled out in front of you, not your boss. Just to forgive others, to wake up and be like, man, today's a good day. Thank you for waking me up. Look at the sun's out. Wow, beautiful. I can go outside. I get to do this. I think that's a great way to live our lives. And for me, that was a kind of a deeper level of what happened with the jailer. He must have been in shock, just going like, how are these dudes inviting me to hang with them? This is cool. I want to live my life like that's liberating for him.
No kidding. Uh, I was talking about the smile, and I'm watching you tell the story, and you're so engaging. And I've heard the statement once made where it's something like, "I'd rather be a fool for Christ than a fool for anything else," right?
Mm.
And folks, you should go and check out Ted's Instagram account because it's engaging, it's informational, it's educational, and it's entertaining, right? And there are times, Ted, where it looks like you are like, I'm Ted. I'm going to dance around here like a fool. You were doing it with a claret jug just the other day. For the non-golf people, that is the ultimate golf trophy in all of golf for winning the Open, the British Open, that Scotty won in 2025. And I'm envious, man, because all of us want to be these people that sort of people look up to. And yes, you who have people look up to you, but you're like, man, I'm just a funny guy that's going to have some fun too. And I'm not afraid as an influencer yet to poke a little fun at myself. I mean, you did this video one time where I think it was with Bubba, where Bubba was in the car and you were like dancing along beside the car and not getting into the in the car door. And I'm like, "Oh, this is so liberating. Big guy, tell us how you do that, please, because there's a lesson in it too."
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm just pointing out my flaws right now. I mean, I think many of you saw my reaction at the Ryder Cup, and how I lost my head and got angry. And when you know you're a man that's a sinner and that you're broken and that you're, as Paul said, what I want to do, I don't do, and what I don't want to do, I do. When you live your life that way, you realize, man, I'm really nothing. And even Paul, wrote, "Which of you shall boast? Everything you have has been given to you." And so I know that I've never hit a shot. I know that I've never made a putt. Someone asked me the other day, I'm a scratch golfer, but they're like, "What's the biggest tournament you've won?" And I was like, I don't even know if I've ever won a tournament, as a golfer myself, because I turned pro and stuff. But anyway, it's just, it's easy to be humble. This will sound funny, but it's easy to be humble when you suck, and I feel like I suck. And because I feel like I suck, it keeps you humble. It's like, man, I fail so much at so many things, parenting, caddying, picking the wrong club. I mean, I remember in 2023, I put Scotty over the back bunker 2 times on 12 at Augusta. I was like, what am I doing in the bushes back there? It's like,
Yeah, but the wind bounces around the place.
yeah,
Ted.
but I'm just saying, like, you fail constantly in life as a man. And so I really don't know how people can get in front of others and be like, beat your own chest, man. I know I'm a failure in many things. And I'm just very grateful uh, for the opportunity to share that with people and just be open and honest, saying, man, look, I'm broken. It's part of my retreat. When I bring 40 men in and we sit down one night, and last year was very powerful. Scotty won 9 times, including the Olympics in one year. It's like, and everybody thinks like, oh, what a great year. And then I share, man, these are some things I'm dealing with at home. And people are like, what? You're having troubles? And then this year with our nephew, life happens. So when you're vulnerable and when you let people know, man, I don't have it all together and I don't claim to have it all together, I think it's a really powerful tool for other men to come alongside and say, hey, I don't have it all together either, man. And I'm not trying to fake it on social media. I like to cut up and have fun because I think that's fun. I like to try to make videos that hopefully somebody will smile, and I also like to share some wisdom. But I also want people to know, man, I don't have it all together. I don't. I really don't. So yeah, that's just who I am. I'm trying to just be as real and as authentic as I can. One last thing, one of my favorite people is Jim Murphy, the author of Inner Excellence.
Mhm.
He's worked with a lot of guys on the tour, and this kind of started with him. One day he said, wake up and go to Starbucks and get in line and send me a selfie with your bed head. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could do that. And it took courage for me to go in a town. I don't even live here. I'm not going to see anybody I know, but get in a Starbucks line with 30 people and take a selfie with your hair sticking up and, haven't brushed my teeth yet and send it to him. And as you start to realize, man, if you can laugh at yourself, if you can kind of get over yourself, life is just a lot better. I don't have to carry this weight of trying to be perfect. There's only one being that's ever been perfect, and he died on the cross for us. So that's liberating for me as a man. And that's what I'm trying to do on my social media is just let people know, man, I need Jesus just like everybody else does.
The Reverend Ted Scott told you about him. I want to read this to you as a parting shot because you've tied such a beautiful bow on it. It's 1 Corinthians 9:22 and 23. This is Paul, and he goes, I have become all things to all people, kind of what you do on social and such, so that by all possible means, there you go, it's not just preaching, it's acting, it's conducting yourself, it's engaging people, I might save some,
Mm,
not everybody, some, just one, maybe. I do this all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings.
mm,
And as I'd mentioned at the top of this all, second chances over here. Ted Scott, folks, has been a caddy for a long, long time. Now he's at the very top of the pile.
Mm.
And it's an incredible ride to watch you there. And the cool thing that people can learn from you, Ted, is that you're the same guy that was caddying for Grant Waite many moons ago, and then Bubba Watson, and now the world's number one in Scotty Scheffler. So I commend you, my friend. You're a man amongst men.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the kind words, brother.
All right, folks, share the handle where they can find you for your stuff, please, Ted.
Yeah, J Ted Scott at well, I guess J Ted Scott. Yeah, that's my email. J Ted Scott is my Instagram handle. So that's I only do Instagram. So yeah, that's it.
And is there any sort of a place or foundation or anything that you support or people can send funds to? Do you do anything like that, or is there a place?
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I are, we love to support local pastors and organizations. So I would say, if people are interested in donating some money, I could certainly direct them to some great places here. Locally, one of my favorite people in the entire world is a pastor who bought an old nightclub 15 years ago and turned it into in the hood and turned it into a church, and he's changing that community, a very poor impoverished community from the inside out. And we just had this 15-year anniversary last night. It's called the Harvest Center Church in Lafayette, Louisiana. And man, tithing doesn't pay the bills, so he requires a lot of outside help. Because there's just no money in that community. So yeah, I love when people support him. That's something that if you want to go DM me, I'll send you to him, and that would be an incredible way for people to bless just a local man that I believe in tremendously.
Sensational, my friend. Again, everybody, thanks for downloading this. Do share this with your friends. Again, it's just about one person. And we exist here at this Greater Call podcast to help you to make better decisions so you can have a better life, so that you can lead people better, your sphere of influence, and to leave a legacy. That's the most important thing, just as Ted Scott is doing. Remember to follow us on the socials. It's at the Greater Call. The YouTube channel is the same thing. Go over there, subscribe, tell your buddies. And in the meantime, thank you for downloading. We love you guys. Go and be a legend.